So now we
Okay.
got a recording for everybody. Good to go.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks everybody for hanging out. I was really curious about the new SuperSpeed product. I've been a longtime fan. I've got the clubs on the wall there for dramatic effect in the background for this video. But like I've been a longtime fan. I have used them personally. I know a bunch of people that have used them. It's not a joke. It really works. And so when the guys came out with the new SuperSpeed C, which I have right here, look at this. With this weight on the end and counterweight training, totally different than overspeed training. I was really curious. So I thought, let's all hang out for a little while and chat about it and just hear how it works. Cause I really don't know. I mean, you've talked about increasing arm speed and hand speed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is that good for everybody? Do we all need that? Like, I'm sure we all have questions. So that's why we're hanging out. I have questions. I would love to hear everybody. There's a chat box. If, you know what we should do to start out? Let's see. Where's everybody from? If you just punch in the state or country or city, love to hear where we have people hanging out from. But that would be awesome. And then just to make sure you know where that chat is, we got Florida, Texas, Indiana, perfect, Colorado, New York, all over the place. This is great. So if you have a question, punch it in there. We'll get to them as we go down the chat. But Mike, yeah. So I mean, walk us through this. I mean, it looks like a traditional, you know, kind of. You've got the normal super speed weight on the end.
Absolutely.
You've got the normal grip, but then you've got this red thing here.
Yeah, it sort of looks a lot like a normal super speed club, but it's nothing like a normal super speed club at
Okay.
all. It's essentially the same weight as a standard men's driver, this particular one. And we'll probably have models coming out. We're actually doing some testing on that to see if it even makes that much difference if we change the weights relative. But this one's the same weight as about a standard men's driver, but it has a very significant counterweight in the grip that you actually grip below. So you grip below that counterweight, just kind of changes the physics of the way the golf club is going to load and unload during the golf swing, which we've seen some really positive impacts on hand and arm speed improvement and also release speed. Corey, if it's
Could you
okay with
define
you, I kind of wanted
counterweight?
to.
What does counterweight mean actually in a driver like this? Like, what does that mean?
So essentially means that so the balance of the club is changing significantly. We're changing the MOI of the club, right? So like in a normal golf club, your grip weighs 48 to 50 grams. The shaft weighs probably 65-ish grams, somewhere around there. And then the head is going to weigh somewhere around 200 grams, all right? So that's a normal golf club. And you can change those things subtly to change swing weight. Swing weight's essentially the idea of changing that balance point subtly to do some different things in how that club feels in your hands, right? Well, if you think about counterweighting a club, what you do is you actually take away some of the weight from the head, right?
Okay.
So instead of having a 200-gram head on that club, we actually have about a 100-gram head on that club. And then we put 100 grams of weight on the back of the grip, essentially behind where the player's hands are. So the fact that, number one, the balance point of that club is way different, changes the MOI of the club, so it essentially reduces the resistance of your swing with the same weight club. So it would be effectively making the club lighter without making it lighter. And then the other piece that's really important is that a lot of that weight is behind the player's hands in the grip. So it's no longer, it's actually now you're holding the club in between those 2 points of weight. Okay, now obviously much more toward the grip, but still behind that, which what happens there is as that club starts to get past the center of rotation, then there's almost like this slingshot sort of effect that allows the club to release a lot faster. So that's kind of how the actual release point of all this increases in speed and how that really, really improves, gives you that ability for your hands and arms to create a faster release in the golf swing. And that's kind of, again, that sort of overspeed training concept of getting used to that sensation, that feel, which then can go back into your swing to increase speed.
Gotcha. Did you want to dive into a few things first?
I thought a really good thing to do, just kind of go through sort of an overview of why we created this training club. And I think that involves having to kind of go back a little bit, take maybe 2 steps back here just to look at some of the other things we did with overspeed training and then why this complements it really well and how it does that.
Okay.
And I think if we can go through that real quick, and feel free to yell at me if you want in the middle of this. If you have a question about something, that's absolutely fine. And then when we get done with that, then we can really go into some more detailed Q&A on any of the details. And, I'll remind everybody that's watching too, please, if you have a question, make sure we don't miss it and make sure we don't forget about it. Just type it in that chat box on the side and we'll just scroll through and make sure we get to all of those at the end. So what I'm going to do real quick, Corey, if that's right, I'm going to share my screen just so people can see a little presentation we're going to do. And we'll go from there.
Awesome.
All right, everybody should be able to see this. So, we had a couple big things that were in the, I would say, R&D in the entire reason that we developed SuperSpeed Golf in the first place. And one of those is that we really do have a deep belief that helping people hit the ball further really does help them have more fun playing golf, keeps people playing the game longer. And honestly, man, it's just fun, right? Like everybody wants to hit the ball further. And there's a lot of untapped potential for golfers that most people don't even know that they have when it comes to being able to hit the ball significantly further. So if we look at it on a very background level, we want to actually look at what affects how far a player hits a golf ball. One that, we've talked about a lot in the past, and I know you probably have too, has to do with the physical, right? It definitely makes a difference, how much force a player can produce, strength, functional range of motion, stability, all of those great elements affect greatly a player's ability to create speed and power. So there's that piece. Mechanics, I mean, I'm a golf coach. If I don't talk about mechanics, I might get like booed out of the PGA at some point. So like it's, swing mechanics are obviously very important. We look at that in kind of a big picture level, looking at how a player interacts with the ground, how those forces and torques are going to affect the rotational speed of the different segments of their body, and then how that rotational velocity eventually goes out the arms, hands, club, and actually is applied to the ball. So that speed pyramid model is something that's really core to our all of our philosophies as far as how we deal with the mechanics of the swing. And we'll get back to this in a second, because this is actually one of the pieces I think that's really important to looking at why we created the C Club in addition to our normal overspeed training set. Equipment's obviously a big one. That's one that I don't think we talk about enough. I always joke that, driver fitting, in my opinion, is actually the second fastest way to get more distance out of your golf game. And, everybody gives me so much crap about that. When I was actually just teaching a workshop over in Denmark about a week and a half ago to some PGA professionals in the PGA Denmark. And they looked at me and were like, what do you mean it's the second fastest? And I was like, look, guys, how long does it take you to do a driver fitting? And, they were kind of talking to each other in Danish a little bit, which I didn't understand. And then they came with a consensus that was like, well, okay, like 45 minutes to an hour. Well, our protocols only take 5 to 8 minutes. So we're the fastest, second fastest is equipment fitting. Now, this is the one that we've started to really do a lot of work with overspeed training, right? Looking at not just how your body works physically from a strength, functional mobility standpoint, but also looking at how does your brain control your body and what expectation does your brain have from a speed response whenever you do different motor activities like a golf swing. That's a big one, and that kind of foundation is based on the whole motor unit process, where you have a motor neuron in your brain that sends a signal down your central nervous system, arrives at the muscles of your body, and then those muscles respond. And one of the major things that we determined and we've found in our research developing our overspeed training products is that response of the body to that signal from the brain is changeable, and it actually is resettable, if you will, to something significantly faster than what your brain normally expects. And that's one of the big keys to overspeed training. Again, this is brain training, so it doesn't have the same rules as when we're doing physical training in the gym, or even in many times practicing skill development on the golf course. When we're looking at this stuff, it's a very different kind of process with short amount of, generally shorter type protocols, lower reps, higher intensity, all those type of things really help us do this with overspeed training. Now, even before this, though, with brain training, we snuck in a lot of other types of training into our protocols that a lot of people might not even know are really there. One of them is all the non-dominant training that we do. Non-dominant training actually is one of the fastest ways we've found to increase some of your like stability chain type stuff in the kinematic sequence. So, for the biomechanists out there, your deceleration chain, where we see each one of those segments stabilize and rotational velocity tends to jump up higher into the next segment as they go. But that stability chain, or that firing chain that we see in the kinematic sequence, is something we train all the time in our overspeed training protocols using that non-dominant training aspect of the training. We also put in a lot of like pre-activation type work. So we put in a lot of PAP training into our stuff, where we're kind of preloading a segment before we're trying to get speed and power out of that segment, which we tend to see a huge jump or a huge boost in speed from those type of drills. This is kind of like that concept of, trying to work on vertical jump, standing up on a box or something, jumping off and landing, and then jumping right back up. You can see a big jump in increase in that speed and that force production just because you're preloading these segments. We ended up with 5 different levels of protocol with SuperSpeed Golf. So there's 5 different levels of our overspeed training protocols, and they get gradually more intense. They actually get a little bit higher volume, but they all stay at that kind of max intensity, keep it really, really intense. And we've watched people go through this training now for years, and we've seen what was happening. About 3.5 years ago, we developed those little ones you can see in the middle of that slide there, a little harder to see, but they're called our ASD protocols. These are actually specific protocols that we're trying to improve. We're trying to improve those speed pyramid items, right? So if somebody really has a deficiency in how they use the ground, we have a protocol to really work on ground reaction force, pressure, pushing the right way into the ground, and helping to increase force production in the ground. We also have one for rotational sequencing, and we have one for lag and wrist mechanics. Well, one of the things that we found to be really interesting watching people go through these segments, doing a lot of testing in 3D motion capture and ground reaction systems, is that almost 100% of the time we see big gains, in a player's ability to increase ground reaction force, increase like peak vertical force, those sort of things. You get big results there. We also saw huge results in rotational velocity in the segments, usually somewhere in the 15 to 18% increase in rotational velocity in the big segments of the body for like the pelvis and the torso. One of the interesting things that we found, though, is that with overspeed training, we would still only, on average, see somewhere around a 5.5 to 7% gain in your rotational velocity in like the club segment and the arm segment. So kind of as everything got up to the upper segments, it seemed to have a little bit less effect practically, if you will, to what's actually being applied to the golf ball. So we always thought that there were some ways to increase that, to really target that side, because obviously if we're getting bigger numbers going through the big muscles of our body, we want to be able to continue those gains as we get out to those smaller segments. So that was one of the main reasons that we came up with the counterweight training piece, is to really target that rotational velocity in the hands, club, release speed of the swing, because we always thought it was one of those things where there was more to gain. Not that people didn't get gains, we just thought there was more to gain there, even to complement our normal overspeed training process. We still see that same training cycle, though. We still see that process of you get a jump right away when you start the training. You go through about a 6 to 8 week normalization phase. Then you'll end up in a plateau phase for a while. Then you'll see another jump, another normalization, another plateau. And that pattern theoretically it will go on forever, which is kind of diminishing returns in how long it takes to get between the jumps and how big the jumps are when you do get them. So we talked about it. I want to bring up another concept too here, which is something we call overload training. This is actually another really interesting piece, maybe a slight tangent, but I think we always need a little curveball in these things. Overload training would just be very directly talking about increasing motor unit activation. So essentially trying to get more motor units firing during some motion that you already know how to do in order to get that to increase speed. Now, what's really interesting about this, you got to lift heavy stuff to make this happen, right? This is a lot of that type of work that you'll do to actually try to get every single muscle fiber in your body functioning. And then what we found is if you get all those things functioning, let's say we're just doing a deadlift, or we're doing that with some type of ballistic med ball training, what we find there is that once we get those motor units active, they're much more likely to become active during the motion when we go through overspeed training, which I think is a really cool thing. One of our great colleagues, actually in the baseball community, named Steve Johnson, owns a big baseball academy in Alexandria, Virginia, did a study recently where he added an additional little phase into the training. So his players, he did a study where he was going to have players do a warm-up, then an overload prep workout that had nothing to do with swinging a baseball bat, but just did like heavy type work where we're activating motor units. And that prep work was then immediately followed by doing the overspeed protocols for baseball for hitting with our SuperSpeed slugger products. And what we found there was wild. So like on average, we see about a 6 to 7% gain in bat speed using our baseball products. Normally, Steve actually saw almost a 10% average gain adding in that overload prep phase. So it's kind of interesting. There's more things out there that we can do, and our brains are continually ticking on ways to get this stuff going. So the other one that I think is really key is to look at the differences in some of these types of training. With overspeed, we're always looking at using the actual motor program. So this is for golf, we're always swinging golf clubs. We're trying to swing it as fast as possible, trying to increase that response speed, and we're always doing light stuff first because we need the body to move fast first in order to train it. With those overload ideas, we actually have to do that. Actually, we find it's best trained outside the normal motor program, so just general physical activity, moving more load, increasing activation, and generally you're only using heavy stuff in that. So that's another key point that we can talk about if you'd like. Counterweight training in its purest sense, like we were talking about right when we started, is really just changing the physics of this motion in order to allow for more speed to happen at a certain part of the motion, in this case right down around impact, where we can get those kind of neurological benefits of your brain remembering that faster reaction speed, faster speed right at impact to really target this hand and arm motion in the swing. And as you showed our SuperSpeed C club there, the way this thing's designed, we have a lighter weight head on the club and a much heavier weight back behind the club, and then the overall weight's about the same. But it changes that overall balance of the club significantly. And I think it's also important to note that you're supposed to grip below the counterweight on the grip. So this is actually, if you measure this club, it's actually a little longer than an average driver. It's about 45, almost 45 3/4 inches, because we want you to grip it down actually below that counterweight. The protocols for this are something else I think are really cool. We have 3 levels of protocols for this. Now, what's interesting is we're no longer cycling through 3 different weighted clubs, right? That's the whole overspeed training concept. Let's go through light to heavy in these reps. Now we've only got 1 club with that counterweight. So we do a couple more sets of the same type of positions. So instead of just doing 1 set all the time in the other drills, we do 2 sets, but then we do different positions. The positions we do in these protocols are primarily designed to destabilize the player's lower body so that they have to force to make it even harder to produce upper body speed, so that when they go back to having that normal stable base, it seems incredibly easy for them to create these faster rotational velocities in their hands and arms. So this is the level 1 protocol. Again, not that many swings. It's not a huge amount of volume. We do normal swings. Narrow stance is going to be something we actually used in overspeed training for players that had a hard time kneeling. We always use this where we would just put the feet close together, destabilize the lower body. You no longer have those 2 points of contact. It's more of a centered point of contact. Really helps you to focus on that rotational speed in the upper body segments. And then we actually still do a lot of our other drills that are working on sequencing and all these other things, because those are also limiting factors to a player being able to max out speed and power with their hands and arms. Level 2, we do add in our kneeling swings again. Kneeling is a really important part of this because that's a great way to focus on upper body speed. And then we also do a drill called our leg back swing. So if anybody's ever done that drill where you kind of like put your trail leg back and up on the toe and just up on the lead foot pretty much, it's another way to destabilize the lower body. We do both the trail leg back and the lead leg back in these drills. And then level 3, we actually do a version of that while we're kneeling. So we do a knee back drill. So you're essentially on one knee in that. And then we actually add in our big progression double step drill where we're preloading both segments and really taking advantage of that. So those are the protocols for the C Club. They are completely different and completely separate than the normal overspeed training protocols. We're going to be launching some of our online content, Cordy, soon in our Series Certified program. We're going to put some more content up there about the SuperSpeed C clubs. So if you guys have already looked at our online SuperSpeed Certified program, just be ready. There's going to be some new stuff coming in the next year here on the details on the C club. All right, cool. Well, that's what I've got for that. I'm sure we have some questions now, and I'm sure you probably have some questions too. So
we do have questions. We do have questions. I guess like just to start out, where does this fit in with the training, right? So I saw someone ask, like, when do I do this? I have the normal set. When do I add the C in? Does it fit in? You showed the phases, right? Like, is it you start it here, like at a specific point, or?
Yeah, so we designed this training system. This is one of the reasons it took us so long to get this out. Like, we knew this was going to be a good idea. It was just a matter of how do you integrate it, right? What we decided to do with that is we decided to make them two separate systems that each can work very well for players on their own. Because again, if you're working with counterweight training with the protocols there, if you noticed as we went through that, there's still ground reaction force drills, there's still sequencing drills, all of the same stuff is there, right? We just have more of a focus toward the upper body segment speed. Think of the overspeed training protocols as having all of the stuff. We're still working on hand and arm speed in a major way in the normal overspeed training protocols. It's just we've seen that the focus there is a little heavier toward the side of the ground reaction force and rotational sequencing. So they both work independently. So if you have never done any of this before, either one of them that you get is going to be going to give you positive results in speed gains in your swing. Opinion at this point, because we don't have enough studies out there yet to really know for sure, but my theory is that they're going to work optimally together, because then we're really focusing on all of those major segments in the best way possible from a training standpoint. So what I would recommend, if somebody wants to start from scratch, you end up with both systems, and you'd start the level 1 overspeed training protocol. You do that 2 days a week with a day off in between, and then you do the SuperSpeed C training 1 day a week, and that would be like your 3rd day a week. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So
yep.
to do 3 days, you do those 3 protocols. Now, the other thing that we wanted to do, we knew there were going to be a lot of people that have already been doing our overspeed training for quite some time, and they want to add this in, right? So what we also found is if you've progressed into like that level 4, level 5 protocol, what we find is you can reduce the number of reps that you're doing in that level 4 protocol. So that one usually does 4 reps per drill. We would reduce that to 2, and then we would actually add in the level 1 SuperSpeed C protocols in the same training session. So because that player's been doing it more, they can handle a little more volume. That's how we would handle those players who have been doing it for a while. But both systems are going to be very effective on their own. Optimally, I think working them together theoretically should give even better results.
So maybe just to simplify or break it down. So the traditional training system, working on ground mechanics, just like how we use the ground, getting that more efficient and better, more powerful, right? With the traditional training system. And then you talk about rotational sequencing. So and you're kind of referencing kinematic sequence, and
I'm referencing
that a little
kinematics. I'm working like segments transitioning in the right order, basically just getting the rotational sequencing of the golf swing more efficient.
Gotcha. And then with this, we're talking about hand and arm speed. There's an interesting question here. If one's swing mechanics are needing improvement, where'd it go? There it is. A lot of arm casting, early extension and release over the top. Am I correct in thinking you should do the normal super speed first and improve that and improve your mechanics by learning some of those things and not do the super speed C? I don't know if you can see that question, but that might be an interesting one to kind of piggyback.
Big picture level is this. So obviously, overspeed training, counterweight training, none of this replaces working on the skills that are necessary to play high level golf. These systems help increase neurologically the speed that your body's moving. Now, there's a couple different angles you can look at that question. I mean, I think if you have a golf coach and you're working with a team and this becomes part of your overall routine, I think, let that coach decide where the best time for this to happen in your process is going to be. However, on the other side of that, all of the drills that we do in all of these protocols work on a lot of those speed pyramid mechanics that increase efficiency of how you're sequencing, of how you're using the ground, of how you're creating lag and wrist mechanics to apply to the ball. So you can kind of reverse engineer that in some ways. And again, I'm a golf coach, but again, my goal as a golf coach, if I can get somebody to improve an aspect of their swing, increase the efficiency of the mechanics of their swing, and I never even had to tell them they had a problem in the first place. I mean, that's like gold standard to me as a coach. That's 100% game. So one of the things that we see all the time is that if I give a player that, let's say, has some pretty bad casting mechanics in the way they swing, early release mechanics, if I give that player drills like we have in our level 1 overspeed training thing and level 1 counterweight training, that step change of direction drill, where we're forcing that player to transfer pressure to the lead side, we're forcing that player to let the lower body sequence earlier in the process, it is a near 100% success rate that we're going to see an improvement in their ability to lag the club. Okay, so again, from a reverse engineered standpoint, if I can have a player and their goal is just make this club move faster down by the radar, and they know that's the goal, and I'm telling them, here's some positions, here's some drills, do these drills, make that number go higher. If they're able to create a successful rep of that drill, they pretty much have to increase the efficiency of the way they're using their hands and arms in the swing to some extent. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, so there's another question talking about, to what extent do incorrect swing mechanics get burned in or need to be undone if we're doing the super speed, with poor swing mechanics, right? It's kind of along those lines.
Yeah. I mean, well, let's put it this way. I mean, you can't change motor programs, right? So like if you have a massively ingrained sort of motion that you make in your golf swing, that's never going to go away. It's always going to live in your brain at some level. Your best path, if you want to change that, is to create a new motor program that does some things differently, right? That might have some similarities, but some differences. So one of the best ways we've found to start to create a new motor program is to get out of your comfort zone, get out of the norm. And I mean, honestly, like what we do with our super speed stuff, like get after it, swing really aggressively, and get used to doing that, get comfortable doing that, then apply that to hitting golf balls. And it seems to be a very fast way to create a new, more dominant motor program that can alleviate some of those concerns that you might have had with your mechanics. But yeah, I mean, I never shy people away from doing these types of training just because they have mechanical flaws. We tend to see a lot of those different things tend to get better for people as long as they go about it the right way and they go about it trying to become more athletic, trying to become more efficient. In my, I believe pretty strongly that it's impossible to increase the athletic efficiency of your golf swing and not somehow have improved the mechanical flaws that you have. And that's a broad statement because you got to look at every player differently on what they are, and everyone's going to have a different path to that optimal efficiency. But if you increase your driver club speed by 5 miles an hour, something became more efficient in the way you were swinging that golf club, and that's probably going to have a positive impact on the mechanics of the way you're swinging as well.
I think you nailed it on the head. Like, you're never going to be in trouble if you're getting more athletic in your golf swing.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Like this, it forces you to, right? Like, you've got to get more athletic. You're not going to swing it faster if you get more technical, right? Like,
I've seen it kind of get people out of those ruts where they've been working on mechanics and technique of the golf swing for years, and they've almost imposed all of these artificial like governors on the engine because they're trying to hit different positions or trying to do certain things in the swing. And what they're actually end up doing after over a lot of time is their brain's limiting how fast their body can move to try to make sure those goals are achieved, instead of just becoming more athletic in the overall grand motion, and that actually having a positive effect on all those different ways. I think it's our fault sometimes as golf coaches, because it's easier for us to try to finite out a piece of that golf swing and work on that just a little component. And I think whenever you do that as a golf coach and you try to work on one little area of the swing or one aspect of the swing, you have to always, like within that very first hour of introducing that to somebody, make sure they know how that applies to the overall motion, so it doesn't become a technical separate piece instead of being just a part of the whole.
So I got to know, tell me about the testing that you've done, like so in the development process over the last 2 years, right? Like what are some of the tests that you've done? What data have you gathered? What things have you seen improved with that, the SuperSpeed C, the counterweight training? Like what have you seen?
We did a lot of stuff with Hack Motion. We've done some stuff more recently with gears and a few other of the 3D systems. It's a little harder to test this because, well, one thing, you know, when we were developing SuperSpeed, we were running like 4 locations of like a high-end performance golf academy and had everything right there. So this, we've been relying on a few other of our partners and things to do some of that testing for us, which is fine. But what that's really shown, I mean, we've got players that have been doing SuperSpeed overspeed training for 2-3 years that are getting additional 5 to 6% gains in swing speed after the first session of doing the counterweight training. So there's definitely big gains to still be had with this thing, even if people haven't been out there. So that's been about the average that we've seen. We definitely see, like, when you start to look at like release factor, you start to look at like release speed in the hands, you start to look at angular velocity of the hand and arm segments moving through, those are starting to see closer to those like 12 to 15% jumps like we used to see, like we see with overspeed training in like the pelvis and torso segments. So that was kind of it. Like we just felt like there was that little segment that we could do better with, we could do more for. And in order to do more for the hand and arm segment, we had to go about like kind of changing the physics of the club a little bit to really get that application.
Gotcha. One, maybe I'll just play devil's advocate because that's kind of what I do, I guess, all the time. So like you think about this, if I'm going to improve my hand and my arm speed, is it going to throw off my timing and am I lose like club face awareness? And am I just going to start, you know, spraying it because I have no idea where the club face is? Like, I'm sure you've heard that. What's experience?
Yeah, if anything, what we'll see, just because people are, you know, when they go back to their club, they're ready to release it faster. We'll actually tend to see them leave the face open just a little bit more because everything gets a little head and there's a little more resistance once they go back to their club. So that takes a handful of swings for better players to tend to find it. Like, we do not find that it's going to like just totally, you know, ruin somebody's ability to use their hands and arms or they have to completely relearn those skills. We find that it is something, especially with hands and arms, because that's where so much of our fine motor control is, that the adaptation speed of that to that newer speed happens very quickly. I mean, again, we don't have any formal studies done on that yet, just because the product's brand new, but we certainly will. A lot of the tour players that have kind of have had it in their hands haven't really reported back that there've been any issues with the control factor with that. Kind of like the overspeed training products, when you're done with that training session and you hit those first few balls and, you know, the speeds are up significantly, it might be up by 5-6 miles an hour. The player doesn't really feel like they're up 5 or 6 miles an hour. I think it's something we hear all the time regardless. They don't feel like they're swinging that much faster. It's just they are, because they're accessing speed their body was already capable of producing. So it doesn't take a handful of swings. Kyle and I always joke when we have tour players going through the training, it's usually like the 4th ball they hit right after doing the training that they usually just like nut about like 20 yards further than their normal average drive. And they just kind of look back at you like, what was that? Like, how did I just do that? So
nice.
Yeah, we really haven't seen a negative impact.
Gotcha. So there's a question over here, which I think was interesting. So like for folks, if you are familiar or not, like you'll see different clubhead speeds when using different sticks in the normal version. The lighter stick, you obviously swing faster. What do you see with the C? Like, are you looking to have it over your traditional, you know, clubhead speed with the driver? Like, is it going to be under? Does that matter? Like, do you even look at it at all?
It's going to be significantly faster. So
okay.
Be closer. Well, again, I don't have enough data points to tell you it's going to be on average, you know, like the green club, we see about 19% faster than a normal golf swing. I don't have that number yet, but I can tell you that in general, you're going to see this closer to around where that green club would swing in the overspeed training sets.
Okay.
You know, around that type of a level of a jump, more so than just, you know, it's not going to be significant. It's certainly not going to be slower. Certainly not going to be slower. But
well, I guess I didn't even ask. I mean, should you be looking at clubhead speed when you train with the C, or does it not matter? Like, do you typically throw it down?
We still like to have people with the radars down there just to be able to, you know, really kind of get that feedback. Because again, you know, that's part of the discovery learning process, right? You know, if I get a feel that makes the club move 5 miles an hour faster, I want to know that that one worked, and the feel that made it go down 5 miles an hour, I want to know that that didn't work, right? So I think that's always a key. But yeah, during that training, you just want to be maintaining and trying to get that radar number up another mile an hour every time. Just try to max it out with every swing.
Gotcha. I'm seeing some folks asking about like the traditional systems. Maybe when we're done with like SuperSpeed C questions, we jump back and just quickly explain how overspeed training works as well. But let's keep diving through these. Yeah, a lot of questions on when to start SuperSpeed C versus the traditional set. If somebody's on here and they haven't done either, they don't have the traditional system, they don't have SuperSpeed C, you recommend picking up traditional set first and training with that?
I would say if you want to go all in on the whole thing, get them both and do them together. I think that, again, theoretically will be optimal because we're targeting every piece of that speed pyramid in as efficient way as we can possibly target it from a coaching and training standpoint.
Could you think about your swing and like choose, say like, hey, I need more work on my ground mechanics, or I need more work on my hands? Is that possible or not really?
I would say that could be a possibility if you've got a golf coach that's assessing those things and can say, look, you're just a rock star with the way you use the ground. You sequence really efficiently, but man, you just can't apply it to the golf ball. It's like none of this works. Once it gets to your hand and arms, it just all kind of evaporates. That's a person that 100% needs to do the SuperSpeed C training. However, I'd say that's a pretty rare case if you're talking about amateur golfers. Like most of your players out there are going to have some level of deficiency in all of those areas. One may be more of a problem than others. Again, good, better, best, right? Best.
Yep.
Get them both, do the training, 2 days a week overspeed, 1 day a week with counterweight from the very start, and just continue that type of process through, right? Better would probably be start with the overspeed training stuff, just because it's always better, in my opinion, to work from the ground up with these things. Increase the big muscle stuff first, and then then you can add on the other one at some point. And then I would say that still you're going to get effect, though, if you just start with the counterweight training, you do that one first, you're still going to get benefit there. We kind of see it both ways, right? Like since we started, a lot of the people that now have the counterweight training, and it's been flying out of our warehouse, so there's a lot out there already, have already been doing the overspeed training. We've certainly had some people have started just with that system. So yeah, I can't wait to be able to analyze the data in a year or so to see, tell you 100% definitively this is the most optimal path. But theoretically, it's that good, better, best kind of way I would say there.
Good question from Wes, which is relevant for us northern folks that are stuck inside right now, waiting for spring to arrive. He was wondering when he should start training again. It sounds like he got his the normal system last year. Just wondering if there's a recommended start point for spring season of like start training a month out, I'm guessing, or something like that. Any recommendations? I would think just why not keep doing it all winter, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so you got that pattern of what you're going to expect from the training, right? You usually get a jump, then about a 6 to 8 weeks normalization phase, and then a plateau phase. So it also depends on your goals, right? Like if you're a competitive player and you've got a stretch of competitive tournaments coming up, I want you to be solidly in one of those plateau phases before that point. I think before that point, once you get into that plateau phase, you should probably be getting fit for clubs to make sure that that new speed is being optimized with your equipment so you're getting the most out of it in your game. You don't want to be in a normalization phase when you're going to play Augusta National in a tournament, right? And it makes sense if you think about it. This is actually a problem we don't have in baseball. Like in baseball, when we're training, we don't care. Like, look, there is zero advantage to that ball flying another 20 feet over the fence, right?
Yeah.
But in golf, like 10 yards over the green, sometimes that sucks pretty bad. So, being ready for competition means you need to be honed in and know exactly how far every club's going. So that would be my recommendation there, is balance it based on your season, based on when you're playing your events. I think in the off season is a great time to go hard at this kind of training and get yourself stably into those plateau phases. Because then during season, you can continue doing it. You can work toward those secondary jumps, or you can back off the frequency of the training a little bit during the season, and you can maintain those plateaus for longer periods of time And then when you get toward that off-season time again, you can start to accelerate, get up into the more advanced protocol levels to get those secondary jumps down the road. So, I mean, the periodization of that really is based on, you know, what type of playing events you're trying to do. You know, if you're just out there at your club having fun or playing on the weekends, keep doing it all year round and don't ever stop.
I like that question, and I really liked your answer, but it turns out that was the wrong question that Wes was not looking for. He was asking if he should jump back to level 1 or if he should keep going. He was at level 2 and he stopped on the program.
Yeah, so generally, if you've gotten yourself into the level 2 protocol and you've been doing, if you did the level 2 protocol, let's say for at least 2 or 3 weeks, then I just pick up where you left off. If you like only did the level 2 protocol one time ever and you took 6 months off of doing the training, I'd probably start back at the beginning and go through the level 1 again.
Gotcha. Wes had a great idea.
I'm trying to answer some of these for you guys too, so we get them all in. I'm typing in the answers if you see me.
I am. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Kyle's
Yes.
There's
Kyle
a lot
is
of them.
on it. Wes has a great idea. I have no space to train in the winter. If you can build a shorter version for indoors, that would be cool. I would second that with Wes. If we could get like a miniature version, that'd be great.
It's hard. So we've worked on that actually, because there's a lot of people who have requested. The problem is that when you change the length, you do change the balance of the club, you change the resistance that's giving you. And even if we make it shorter, we essentially have to make it a lot heavier, right? And we've found less optimal results when we change that swing arc too much, because you have to access the same motor program as your golf swing to optimize this training. And if you change things too much away from that, you start to access different motor programs. So I'm going to just say, kind of, at least on a major note, to make it a lot shorter, it's impossible. But I will say this, and I've seen this in like all over the world in cold environments. The protocols only take like 5 to 8 minutes. Like, look, if you can get out there and, you know, play pickleball or play platform tennis or that stuff in the winter for 30 minutes when it's 5 degrees out and have 2 or 3 beers, you can get out in your driveway and do super speed training when it's 10 degrees out for 5 minutes. Just get outside and do it.
Perfect. I will admit I don't often do that.
Cordy, you had a good video on social media of you doing it outside.
I did. Yeah, I did. It was pretty cold. I will admit it was rough. It was real rough. I do get outside, but I try to stay inside. It was a tough day. There was somebody in the simulator, so I couldn't go in there to do it. So I had to run outside, and it was.
I mean, we just did one. We did a program with the French Golf Federation in mid-January. And I mean, it was probably 35 degrees, a little bit of rain. And I had like 20 people out in basically like an alleyway at a university in France doing it outside in the rain. So, I mean, like I said, sometimes if speed's important to you, you just kind of gotta go for it.
Hey, Kyle, I saw that you mentioned a launch monitor on here, which is that new for you guys, or what's up with that?
Yeah, so we recently transitioned to it's brand new in the US, PRGR launch monitor. All you guys might be familiar with PRGR as a Japanese club manufacturer. I can even remember back to seeing Brian Watts, if you guys remember him, lose the British Open, being sponsored by them in 1999. So they've been around for a very long time, and we've been searching for something that gave people a little more data just besides clubhead speed, but also being able to hit a ball and not hit a ball and measure the speed. So that's the advantage of this one. It gives you smash factor, clubhead speed with or without a ball, carry distance, total distance, and is there one other thing, Mike?
Ball speed.
Ball speed, yeah, exactly. And it's super small, fits right in your pocket. And it can be bundled with your SuperSpeed set as well. So we've had good success with it, and I've just been carrying it for about a month now. So
Nice.
Highly recommend it if you want to get something out there. Most launch monitors do not measure clubhead speed unless you hit a ball.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also to add, it also has some pretty cool connectivity options that we're working with. So we'll be able to Bluetooth to your iPhone. We're looking into the development right now of like some tracking software, some app type things that, you know, you'd be able to actually see your history, see your progress and all those kind of things when you have that launch monitor there, to be able to go directly into an app on your phone. So that's still in development, but I'd say we're probably at least 6 to 9 months out on that one. But in the future, we do have those ideas in mind, and this is a device that's going to allow us to be able to capitalize on it.
I like it. Nice. Joe just asked how much that is. What do we got?
The PRGRs are $199 on the website, and I believe the bundles, so if you were to buy those with one of the SuperSpeed sets, those go to $349.
It's less than I thought. Nice. Yep. Ron had a question. If I just do the counterbalance version, what gains would I achieve speed buys without the original set is achievable given? I think like so the question of like, what should I start with? Like my suggestion would be just get started. Doesn't matter necessarily, like do something would be a great suggestion for most of us. And like, just try to get off the fence. And if you want to hit it farther, like do something about it. So that would be my general suggestion.
I think
Not
a lot
very
of
technical.
people, I think too, Cordy, that may not have wanted to like, go all in at like the $200 level with our normal system, $100 level, which is a little less expensive on the counterweight, something that they might like start to get in. What we've even found already though, is some of the people that have bought just the counterweight system have picked it up, gotten some big gains, and then 3 weeks later, they're buying the overspeed training system too, on top of it. Now they're doing them all together. So yeah, I mean, like, I think you said it really well. Like if you feel like hitting the ball further will help your golf game, which we can have an argument about that one forever, because I think it'll help everybody. Yes. But like, yeah, get out there and spend a little time doing it. Like these training protocols don't take hours to do. I mean, we're asking you for like 20, 25 minutes a week, 5 to 8 minutes a day, 3 days a week with a day off in between to do this training to gain, somewhere around 20 yards off the tee. I mean, I've always kind of said, like, if you don't have 25 minutes a week to gain 20 yards, like it's just not that important to you.
Totally. Okay. And then, so there's one question that I saw pop up. So the reason that you don't just add a weight to a driver is because this is the same weight as a driver total,
yes.
Correct?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, when we first started talking about this, one of our partners in the venture with SuperSpeed C is a guy named John Marini. So he had developed, he's actually one of the creators of Perfect Pendulum, actually. So the putting thing, but he had created a little counterweight that was like a strap-on counterweight that would go on the top of the golf club, right? And so we brought those back and did about 3-4 months of testing on it with a number of different players. And we found that people were not getting speed gains from adding, let's say it was a 100-gram counterweight to their golf club, because it essentially made the entire club way heavier than their normal driver, right?
Would it be like the red one then? Like it'd be like
way heavier than that. So like the club weighs 335 grams. So it's like 20 grams, 25 grams heavier than a normal driver. Okay. This would be like you just made your club 415 grams. So gotcha. You're adding 25%, 30% weight to your club. And what we were finding is that was too much to overcome for people to really get a positive impact on their actual before and after club speed. But then what we did is we took it and we threw that counterweight piece on the yellow SuperSpeed club, the one that's in the senior and ladies set, which is about a 220-gram club, and threw a 100-gram counterweight on that and did the same testing. And we're like, whoa, there it is. Like we just saw like jumps like crazy, even from people that already done overspeed training. They're like, okay, well, that's kind of it. Like the counterweight piece is very effective. It's just we got to find a way to make that counterweight not too much heavier than the normal club, that either we access different motor programs or we create too much resistance and we can't create those faster speeds. So that was actually kind of how that happened. We went back to John and we're like, well, John, like I don't think your concept works as it is, but we found something that I think does. And we just so happen to have kind of have a really good way to put little weights on the end of a golf club and change the overall weight distribution. And I think we can put a counterweight on this thing that is like that and create something that can really help people. And yeah, 2 years later, here we are.
Gotcha. No, that's awesome. That makes a ton of sense of why that wouldn't work of just, adding that on the end, because it's so heavy and all that stuff. Got it. Hey, this has been super fun. I think we've tackled a lot of the questions in here. I'm sure that we've accidentally missed one or two, but this is great. I think all my questions have been answered. What feedback have you gotten from tour pros? I know that you guys have just started showing it to them and having them work on that. And what feedback have they been saying?
Yeah, so we just launched it last week at the Honda, and we immediately had some guys come up who definitely have been the loyal users of it. before. One of the ones that is definitely just starting is Brian Gay. And I don't know if you guys have been following Brian Gay, but he's made an incredible jump in clubhead speed lately with his coach Joe Mayo, former TrackMan maestro, all over social media.
Yep.
You guys have seen him, but he's just been hitting 116 miles an hour now with driver, which is incredible for where Brian was on tour. I believe he's in the 107, 106 range when he kind of really started this quest for more speed. And so he's going to add the counterweight on, as he's been kind of a loyal user for many years for the SuperSpeed set, and we're looking for some data there from him. So I don't have a lot yet, but he's excited to use that. And then we got a couple more picking it up this week at Bay Hill as well. So feedback's coming in, just don't have a lot yet. Nice.
Well, I'll be interested to hear that as well as time goes on. Any final questions for folks? I saw that someone asked about a discount code. There's a discount code, Golf Science Lab. Thank you guys.
You're welcome.
There's a discount that will work for y'all if you are picking this up tonight.
Hey, Mike, do you want to just mention about Jack Nicklaus and also XCO, what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, there are club companies actually that are doing some of this as well. So like the whole counterweighting concept, again, that change in the physics of how it releases really will allow the club to release faster. It just changes the resistance to that club releasing down at the bottom of the swing. Yeah, there's a couple club companies that have done some things with that. I think, famously, and I don't know if people know this, but Jack Nicklaus actually always counterweighted his clubs, not nearly to the extent that our training product is, but had a little bit of a counterweight in his clubs for his entire career. It's kind of almost like a hush-hush thing back in the day, though, for that, because he didn't want to give away that secret. But there have been a few other club companies that have done it. A lot of them have done it with putting, where you have the counterweight with the putting, which is kind of a cool side, too. But, yeah, as Kyle said, Zexy has actually done that with some full swing clubs now. So I believe Cobra did release some counterweighted stuff as well. So there is some of this actually happening in the mainstream club manufacturing as well. Again, ours is very extreme for a training process. You'd never probably want to buy a golf club that was as counterweighted as what ours are, but or our training products are. But the concept does have some actual effective gain for being able to actually use this in your equipment as well. It's pretty neat.
Cool. Well, I don't think I have anything else. This was fun. Glad we got to hang out. My questions are answered now. I kind of understand the deal with the SuperSpeed C, and I'm excited to see some data, hear some more, feedback that you guys get over time. And I think the biggest clarity for me is kind of how you broke it down with the traditional training system of, kind of covers this and this, and the SuperSpeed C covers, something different. So it's kind of cool how you broke that down. I like that a lot.
Awesome. Well,
Cordy, people are asking about the discount code. I think your code should be working, right? Golf Science Lab, that's your code?
I believe so. Yes.
We can check. Golf Science Lab should be working. Also wanted to throw out there as well. We're actually doing a one-day SuperSpeed Live workshop this next coming Sunday up in Newark, New Jersey, at the Renaissance Newark Airport Hotel. This is an open to the public event. So if anybody wants to do some hands-on work with some of this stuff, it's basically a 9 to 5, 8-hour program. I think includes we'll include lunch and some other cool stuff with it as well. But basically, we're going to talk about all of our overspeed training products, hands-on, some practical going through the protocols. Also going to talk about some more details on that whole speed pyramid idea, on really those mechanical elements that affect speed and power, and look at some of the physical connectivity and some screens that you can do physically to look at ways that you might have some of those things you could improve physically that also could affect your speed and power. So that's going, it's a kind of last minute for us, but all that information is on our website, superspeedgolf.com. If anybody's interested in attending that event, please sign up online for that as well.
Let's see. Do we have anybody up here in the chat? There's one person from New York. We can get some folks out there. Anybody going to go hang out and attend that?
Corey, we did our first SuperSpeed Live event in Connecticut, actually last September, I believe it was. I think we had just over 30 people in that class. Really a lot of fun. That was actually a 2-day version. Half of that class or more had flown in for it. It was wild.
Nice.
we didn't really expect that to happen, but yeah, it was really cool. So they're fun events. We have a really good time talking about speed and power and all the fun stuff in the world of golf coaching. So yeah, come see it.
Love it. Love it. And I'll send an email out. If you're on this, watch for that. We'll have links to the pages where to get that, the discount code, which is GSL. Sorry about that. That is the discount code. And then recording of this, if you want to zip back through any of this. So yeah, this is great, guys. I will, I'll definitely keep training with this right here. We'll keep going along in that. I will get outside some more, even when it's cold. Mike, you have motivated me, I guess.
Excellent.
I'll get out there.
Well, Cordy, thanks a lot for having us on. This is always fun to do. Yeah, man, I'm sure we'll see you around soon.
Yes, absolutely. Any more questions, make sure to just send them an email and I can forward them on to Kyle and Mike or whatnot. But this is good. We'll see y'all. Thanks for hanging out on a Wednesday with us.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.